Hello, innovators, and welcome to another episode of the Jens Heitland Show, where I connect the dots of innovation and entrepreneurship with my guests. Today's episode is a HIQA episode, and HIQA stands for Human Innovation Questions Answered. In today's episode, we cover the topic of corporate innovation, how to engage with organizational silos. Enjoy the episode. And we are live. Hello and welcome to HIQA, Humans Innovation Questions Answered, and again in a live setting. So if you have questions, please shoot them into the chat box wherever you see this, and I will try to answer them live in these sessions. Total overview and umbrella topic for today is corporate innovation, how to engage with organizational silos. So I see already a couple of people coming in. But let's start with the first one. The first one I got, which is a little bit more towards leadership. So what can I do as a leader in a mid-management position to encourage my team to work better with other teams while innovating? So that was asked by a leader who is working in a larger organization, and this leader was curious about how to do this in a different way, working across the different silos. That's why I put this topic in for today. So I think number one on this topic is be clear on the direction of travel, specifically towards your team. Your team needs to understand where you want to be, where you want to go with the innovation topics, but as well how you want to engage with the different organizational parts you are working with. As soon as they understand this, they can then, of course, go better into that direction. Even more important is understanding the why of it. So you need to explain the why you want to engage with the other departments, why it is important for the purpose of what you're doing. And of course, if you work with innovation like I did in big, large corporate, it's always crucial to work with the different departments, but that requires a different approach from the innovation team, where you go more into details, where you engage with them in different ways, and the why for the team is very important so that they can support you as the leader in the best possible way. And then, of course, as a leader, as I always say, empower the employees, like your team members, to take actions. Crucial for every leader it doesn't matter if you work with innovation or not, empower your team. Give them the possibilities, give them the resources needed and the accountability as well for them to act in the right direction. And don't step always on their toes. Give them the freedom to do things and as well to do things wrong, specifically, of course, in innovation. So I think that's key part on this. And then basically you encourage your team already to go into that direction, explain why, go into how you want to do this and the direction of travel, and then of course give them the freedom. So there's already a question from Sarah. Thank you for that first. Okay. Other departments works against us. How do I turn this around as a leader? Love this question. That's happening quite a bit in organization in general, but specifically when you work with innovation. So what can you do and how to change that? I think first maybe to say it's not about them and us, which I hear a lot. So in the end, it's one organization. The organization has a purpose and a goal to fulfill. If you work in a retail organization, then you fulfill the service towards the retail customers and sell them specific goods, whatever you do, or services. So it's always to highlight it's not about them and us, though that is sometimes helpful. I understand that. And then, of course, understanding and maybe digging a little bit deeper of what is the reason that they work against you? Why do you feel this? Are they different? Do they have different incentives, which is quite often the case? When you work with finance, they're supposed to get the finance in check and try to save as much as possible operational costs. Do they have the right incentives when it comes to innovation? Yes or no? Understanding that is key for you, because if they have the same incentives like you have, then you can play with them and work with them in a completely different way than if you don't. Vielleicht Maybe as well another topic on that is, do they want to protect their power and their authority around a specific topic? An example is, I was working with the marketing department. The marketing was very, very important from a perspective that they want to secure the way of working, they secure the tone of voice you're speaking to the customers. So if you understand, if they just want to protect this piece so that in the end we have a common way of communicating, in this case with the customers, then it's easy to understand why they are maybe pushing against what you're doing. Then it's more about how do you engage them, that you can work together with them, in this case find the right tone of voice, or explain why you don't want to use that tone of voice. There must be a reason for them to understand that as well. And maybe, I mean, what I've seen as well, especially in COVID times where we're still in, maybe people are stressed and that they just want to get bothered with different topics. When you work with innovation, you're basically taking a lot of actions inside the organization. You push the boundaries in all directions, and people get frustrated with that because they just want to get their things done. And maybe it's just because of that. All of that, of course, requires you to find out, you to have conversations and try to feel what's going on. And then for me, a very important topic to that one as well is not playing the game. So if you just play the same game in pushing them back and pushing them wherever you can, then it's basically not helping the whole situation. It's more about giving as much as you can without the expectation that they give something back. Over time, they will learn that you are in it for the long run, that you're in it for the good and positive thing for the company, and they will accept that. And if not, then it's also fine. But it's really about, for me, use the power of positivity and give as much as you can as specifically as an innovation department, because you're dependent on the totality of the organization as well to be successful. And of course, go into conversations, invite for feedback, ask them what's going on, ask them what they think about things. Yes, sometimes that takes longer if you involve different parts of the organization and getting their feedback, but on the long term, them being listened to, them being involved, them feeling be part of exciting topics, which hopefully you do with innovation, will help you to be successful, and then hopefully that will help you to get better in that. And one interesting part I always do is asking them what they're doing, so that you switch towards learning from what they're doing, and maybe then you can adjust your way of thinking differently that they understand of what you're doing. So that's maybe helping there, Sarah. If not, please ask again in the chat, and I can take more on that. Another question from Carol. The other departments, in this case, what is marketing and finance, are not supporting the innovation efforts, despite that it is a clear goal of the company strategy. What can I do as a leader? Very good one, and quite often the case that you have a clear strategic goal of the company where basically innovation is baked into the strategy, and everyone, of course, on the top leadership level agrees that innovation is part of that, and then people are still not really into this or not really supporting. I think it fits to the first question as well, but or to the other question where it's like listening to them. But for me, maybe if we see this with, let's say, 3 steps, find out how they get measured. That's often helping to understand where they come from and why they're not supporting you as they maybe would. So it's really understanding what are the KPIs that drive their success, how they get measured from their leadership towards contribution to the bigger organization. Understanding that will then help you to, maybe that's the step 2 already, translate your work into their KPIs. As an example, when I was working long time ago in a more technical position, I was helping to translate energy savings into sofas sold in a retailer, because the people working on the sales floor, they can't really, are not really into kilowatt hours from an electricity savings perspective. But if you tell them, hey, you need to sell 20 sofas to be able to do this and that, then they can understand that. So that's sometimes as well the issue inside of organization, that they're not understanding what you do. So you need to take the extra effort when you work with innovation to translate that into their language that they understand. And sometimes that means converting your KPIs into other KPIs so that they understand it from their perspective. It's always easier if you take the extra effort rather than them convincing them that they understand you. And maybe then as the third part is showing them the benefit of working with you, showing them the benefit of collaborating. It's way too often when you work with innovation, you want to be fast, you engage with the people you think are the right people and the right departments to involve, and others you are not involving too much. So sometimes it's really about understanding who wants to be involved and then engaging them in certain projects and certain topics as well, so that you get them on track and then supporting that as well. If you take finance, there are a lot of people in finance in most of the larger organizations. And when you drive an innovation topics, then maybe you have one speaking partner in finance who is a little bit involved when you go into, let's say, business case calculations or life cycle stuff. But the rest of the finance organization has no really connection to that. So it's really about how do you engage them? How are there possibilities maybe to use the one finance contact to work with the rest of the organization, so that the total finance organization in the end is helping you? And finance, again, just one of the examples. Hope that helps, Carol. Excuse me. What do we have here? I will not get to my questions today, but it's good. Anthony. So our innovation team works a lot, but we don't get recognized from the organization. What should we do to improve? Okay, that's a very, very good topic. So what can you do to improve the recognition of your organization? Maybe first I would try to understand is, why do you want to get recognized? And you don't need to answer right now. I understand that's maybe personal or from a team perspective. Maybe it's because you're unsecure. The team is unsecure on how they're fitting into the totality. Maybe it's like you want to belong to the wider organization and you want to be recognized for belonging and being part of that. Because you're kind of, if most of the time, if you work with innovation, you're a little bit to the side. You work with topics the rest of the organization not always in everything involved, specifically when you work more with the transformative innovation. So really understanding of what your incentives are of being recognized, and maybe it's just you want to show that you're contributing to the wider success. Going into a possible solution, for me, what always works, and not just inside of an organizational context, as well on a personal context, is document and show the progress and on what you're doing. It helps a lot if people see where you are and what you're doing on an ongoing basis, than rather see yourself popping up. I always give the example on, let's say, the management board. If you're working in a large organization and innovation is important for this organization, then maybe you present once a year or every 2 years or every quarter, whatever, inside of one of the big management meetings to give your progress report. That's basically giving them an understanding of what you do in a frequent time for them. If you work with the organization, day-to-day managers and people working in the organization, they're not seeing these presentations. They don't know, and maybe should not know what's going on that way. But on the other hand, they are maybe interested in understanding more about your work on what you're doing. So it's really about how can you document basic, simple things which people are interested in. I mean, everyone knows how Twitter, how Instagram and all the social media, YouTube in the same way works, where people are just following people because they want to know what's going on in their life. They want to know how their progress is when it comes to sport. They want to know what's the new song when it's a musician. So it's really about like documenting your process and letting other people be part of that. And that can be as easy. Write a company blog. If you work in a larger organization, you will have an intranet share what's going on the company blog, or create a separate page for your department where you share a blog post on what's going on. This week we have had a team meeting, we did this. Another project started, whatever. Give them the possibility, and not necessarily that everyone will read that, but at least they have the possibility of exploring that. Social media, of course, is a brilliant option, which doesn't work always with the big corporates, especially not in the public part. Then you maybe use Yammer in some organization that's still used, where you can inform people on a day base, even with photos like you would do on Instagram or LinkedIn and whatever. If you're into video, like I would do, shoot videos and really explain what you're doing, explain what innovation is, explain the purpose of innovation for your organization, so that people can tap into this knowledge base on an ongoing base. And if we take the example of internet, wherever you host these videos, it's basically they can use these videos to educate themselves and be part of your team, be part of the understanding of what's going on. If you go more fancy, then you can even do a podcast or a vlog inside of your organization where you share these things. For me, it's all about engaging with the different people and serving informations of what you're doing to them in a way that they consume whenever they want to do it. And just by documenting the progress, if you take my podcast, it's super interesting when I look back and listen to the first 20 episodes, because it's such a long time ago, and nobody publicly or most of the people are not going back to that episode. But if I would go into an organization and start and want to understand who are the people working in this department, and they can find a video about, hey, this is, in my case, Jens, and he's working with this topic, and that's where he comes from. That's why he decided to work in this department, which helps in so many things. It's not just exposing yourself and your team into the organization, as well helps your team to formulate better of what is innovation, how do they contribute. And then, of course, when you document the progress of your projects, of the initiatives, then it's also being clear to the point, which teaches you when you are on video. And if you then spread it out into the organization, it's kind of, you create a little bit engagement, and you create the possibility of sharing more and people reacting to it, or even hiring or recruiting internal talent if they see, hey, I want to be part of this part of the organization because it sounds really interesting. I've seen all the videos, I've read all the blog posts, whatever you do. Hope that helps. So if you have questions, please contact me wherever you find me, and or join me on the next live show. Thank you very much for joining, and see you next time. Thanks for listening to today's episode. You will find the links and resources in the show notes of this episode. If you would like to support the podcast, the most impactful thing you can do is subscribing to the show on any of the podcasting platforms and give me a review. This will help me to reach more innovators around the world and bring some of you into the show. If you have any question to the guest or want to engage with me, feel free to reach out to me on social media and contact me there.